What was Deb doing with Lundy at 5 in the morning? Oh.
Dexter, I swear to you, we will find who did this.
Dexter Morgan isn't a vigilante. He's a torturer with better PR. Dexter Morgan, television's most beloved sociopath, has long been presented as a paradox, a serial killer with standards. The Code of Harry supposedly refines his bloodlust into a noble mission: kill only those who deserve it, and do so efficiently. Yet even a casual glance at Dexter's methods reveals something less clinical and more sadistic. His ritual of restraint, awakening, taunting, and ritualized cutting is not a model of restraint. It's performance art for a predator. He calls it purpose. Most would call it torture. The mythology of Dexter's controlled killing collapses under scrutiny. His ritual always begins with the victim regaining consciousness, usually stripped and bound, forced to face photographs of their own crimes. Dexter explains in chillingly calm tones why they deserve what's about to happen. Then comes the cut on the cheek, ostensibly to collect blood for his slides, but undeniably to mark ownership. Only after this intimate humiliation does he kill, typically by a swift stab to the heart. Swift, yes, but far from merciful. The psychological torture has already been done. Dexter doesn't need prolonged screaming. He feeds instead on comprehension. The moment the condemned realizes who stands in judgment, the defense often raised for him, that he doesn't really torture people, rings hollow. Dexter's pleasure is in control, not in the act of inflicting pain. But that control depends on fear, helplessness, and ritual degradation. In his universe, that qualifies as compassion. He disdains sloppy work, meaning torture that's loud, messy, or time-consuming. Not immoral, simply unprofessional. His code is an operating manual, not a conscience. When compared to the book version of Dexter, the distinction becomes clearer. Literary Dexter is less restrained and far less televisually friendly. His killings drift into medieval cruelty, and he lingers on his victim's suffering. Showtime's version, by contrast, sanitizes the spectacle just enough to keep the audience rooting for him. Yet the essence remains. Both Dexters wake their prey, ensure they understand their fate, and savor the moment when realization extinguishes hope. The difference between that and physical torture is one of technique, not morality. The first season makes this uncomfortably apparent. Contrary to some claims, Dexter rarely dismembers the living. The slashing and sawing that occur while victims are conscious are theatrical flourishes, not extended torment. He prefers near-instant death, slitting throats, stabbing hearts, or severing arteries, because it minimizes noise and maximizes control. Torture, as he would see it, is inefficient. It risks discovery. It stains the ritual with chaos. For a man who lines his kill rooms in plastic and alphabetizes blood slides, chaos is blasphemy. Still, the line between efficiency and enjoyment is razor thin. Dexter enjoys his ritual. He relishes waking them up, confronting them with their crimes, watching terror turn to comprehension. In one kill, Season 7's large, defiant victim, he literally dances with exhilaration around the kill table. The clinical detachment crumbles. The mask slips. The audience is watching a man aroused by domination, even if not sexually. The excitement is power, the godlike satisfaction of orchestrating life and death to his own rhythm. For all his sanctimony about the code, Dexter's moral superiority is paper thin. He kills for pleasure, then cloaks it in purpose. The code isn't an ethical system, it's a narcotic rationalization. Like a heroin addict chasing the high of the first dose, he meticulously stages each kill for that brief, ecstatic moment of release, followed immediately by the dreary cleanup. The ritual doesn't make him moral, it makes him organized. Would Dexter condemn another killer who tortured their victims? Publicly, perhaps. Privately, probably not. His opposition would stem not from empathy, but from logistics. Torture takes time, creates noise, and leaves traces. To Dexter, it's simply bad practice. He would dismiss prolonged cruelty as sloppy work, not evil. Morally, he'd be indifferent, unless it risked exposure. He doesn't oppose cruelty. He opposes inconvenience. And yet, Dexter has always been drawn to others who share his appetites. His recurring quest for a kill buddy reveals not moral kinship, but narcissism. He wants to see himself reflected, but cleaner, purer. Every partnership, from Miguel Prado to Hannah McKay, collapses when the reflection distorts. They violate his code, which is less about ethics than about control of the narrative. He alone decides who deserves death and how it should be delivered. If a fellow vigilante tortured their victims, Dexter would likely disapprove only insofar as it reminded him of what he truly is. Not a disciplined crusader, but a hypocrite who kills to feel powerful. The show itself acknowledges this duplicity through contrast. Characters like the Skinner, whose entire modus operandi is torture, disgust Dexter, not because of their cruelty, but because they make him feel uncomfortably seen. He analyzes them clinically, admiring their precision while condemning their messiness. He critiques them as though comparing notes in a professional journal. Too much noise, he'd think. Too much blood spatter. In other words, wrong technique. Dexter's meticulousness gives the illusion of morality. His ritual, plastic sheets, cheek cut, confession, kill, functions as a psychological firewall. It allows him to pretend that his murders are about justice rather than compulsion. The moment he begins torturing victims for the thrill of it, the firewall collapses and the monster becomes visible. That's why the show avoids overt torture scenes. Not to spare the victims, but to preserve Dexter's marketable ambiguity. Of course, the argument that Dexter's methods are humane is laughable. The conscious humiliation, the sensory deprivation, the forced confrontation with guilt, these are textbook psychological torture techniques. His process is surgical only in appearance. It's still agony, just carefully contained agony. Dexter himself admits he enjoys seeing the light go out of their eyes. For him, that instant, the transition from defiance to despair, is the point. Everything else is foreplay. Those who insist he'd reject physical torture misunderstand his pathology. Dexter's disgust is practical, not moral. Torture takes time. Time increases risk. Risk threatens his control. If he could guarantee secrecy, he might well indulge. After all, he keeps victims captive for days when it suits his needs. Dokes being the prime example. His kill rooms are soundproof, isolated, and immaculate. If Dexter truly wanted to stretch the process, nothing in his world could stop him. The only reason he doesn't is because it doesn't fit his ritual rhythm. When viewed through this lens, his so-called code is less a moral compass than a form of obsessive-compulsive discipline. The ritual must be repeated precisely. The method must be clean. The death must be quick. Not out of mercy, but out of respect for procedure. Torture would be a deviation, a contamination. Dexter's need for control is absolute, and that includes control over how long a victim suffers. Pain is acceptable only in measured doses, never beyond the boundary of his design. In his own way, Dexter is as hypocritical as he is fascinating. He condemns others for chaos while drenched in blood. He derides torturers, yet crafts elaborate psychological torment. He rationalizes murder as moral necessity, while enjoying every calculated moment of it. If another killer tortured within the same moral parameters, only targeting those who deserve it, Dexter would likely shrug. If anything, he'd find the technique professionally interesting, but he'd never admit it. His entire identity depends on believing he's different, and that, ultimately, is Dexter's greatest delusion. He isn't a weapon forged for justice. He's a man addicted to control, draped in plastic and denial. The difference between Dexter Morgan and the torturers he'd disdain is not ethics, but aesthetics. One prefers the precision of the scalpel, the other, the brutality of the hammer. Both seek the same end, the godlike thrill of deciding who lives who dies, and how much they suffer along the way. If morality is measured by motive, Dexter fails spectacularly. His kills may be quick, but they're never clean. Not for the soul he insists he doesn't have. For all his talk of rules and restraint, Dexter Morgan is still a torturer. He's simply one with better lighting, sharper tools, and a pathological need to believe he's the hero of his own crime scene.